Welcome to Worlds Cooldown presented by State Farm. I'm Tigris and here to take a deeper dive into the very first best of fives of Worlds 2020. I've got Crumbs and Mark Z. Fellas, is this your first time back on a broadcast together since LCS?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it is.
It's been a long time.
Many years and years. Happy to have you both reunited here on Cooldown where, hey, we've got a lot to talk about because we're not only going to be recapping the day's action, but picking some players that popped off in every single series before we look at what's up in the day to come on our very last day of play-ins. But what happened today? It was quite an exciting day at that. The third and fourth seed from each group ended up facing off in a best-of-5 series to officially end the group streams for two more teams. And the way those two series panned out may be surprising to some. In Group B, LPL's LGD defeated LLA's Rainbow7 3-0, but it was Supermassive from the TCL that took down Mad Lions, and based on that result, I think that's the one that's lingering with us most.
Yeah, it's the most recent one. It's also the bigger surprise. You know, this is the first time that a major region team has lost a best-of-5 during Worlds play-in stage. Yes, HKA did not make it in 2017 out of play-ins, and that was the first time a major region hadn't, but this is the first time that happened in a best-of-5 series. So it is kind of a historic moment, and, you know, huge props to Supermassive for pulling that one off.
And it's cool that we got to go into the best of series already because now we're starting to see the depth of champion pools for a lot of these teams and exactly how they stack up in draft against teams from other regions that they've never faced against before. And a lot of these games moving forward will be draft advantages that just explode games because teams are not used to dealing with players that have this much versatility.
And y'all are already talking about some of the things that we're luckily going to get to dive a bit deeper in today. But first, with some people joining us for the first time, I want to get a temp check on the major takeaways from the day. We officially entered the knockout stage for play-in. So, Mark, if you're trying to recap what's going on, what is the biggest thing that first came to your mind, the difference from today and what we've seen from play-in so far?
I would say best-of-5 versus best-of-1. Easy. You know, Crumb's kind of already hinting on it a little bit with the draft changes. You know, when you're playing single round robin best-of-1, you're not even seeing the matchup on both sides. So if someone had blue side and that was heavily favored for those two teams, that team would pick up a win there. And so, you know, this is a much more balanced situation. LGD, I don't think people would really call a best-of-5 team, but they still get that benefit of the fact that you don't just play this one game. You can It's easier to maintain mental focus if it's not like something going bad in the game and suddenly it's like, oh my God, we're going to lose this one game. You now know that you have the opportunity to reset. And it did feel like LGD was able to play with less pressure on themselves. They were a lot more proactive and aggressive.
They went back to what worked for them before. The Orns, Kindred, just very simple to execute composition. I think the Kindred in particular is really exciting as a pick to come back into the Worlds meta. People just forgot her because she was hard to play. But we were thinking, oh, if you're not playing the Lilia because she's having such a hard time, you can always go back to Graves. Well, Kindred is in that list as well, but luckily for us, the series did deliver the fact that Lilia is still a very good champion despite her scoreline.
And that series delivered in other ways as well, because if we're looking at LGD's performance even leading up to that point, they had already garnered every single first blood, and they maintained that here with 100% Crumbs. Did that impress you at all, or what do you think that implicated for the series?
I mean, it was that the jungler was going to be very active. When you have a Kindred, you need to be pressuring the map constantly in order to secure those marks. And so I think that Peanut and the rest of LGD just have a really good understanding of what it's like to play this champion as a team. And then they get her more gold in other top side of the map. But I really felt like a large part of the game was, unfortunately, Rainbow7 not prepared, not used to what LGD was bringing to the table. And a bit of a draft dissonance out of them, I'm going to say, because not all of the pieces that they had synergize as well as you'd like them to.
And I will say as well, just comboing off the first blood activity, you know, like LGD does have some of the most impressive early game stats. They have huge gold leads. And so this is very scary, you know, starting to look forward, not only in this best of 5 they have to play versus Legacy. I'm sure Legacy, you know, take notes, OPL guys. This is a little terrifying and figure out how you're going to control Peanut. But also, you know, I think everyone should take note of how good GA and Peanut were. We kind of got to see that today and why people were kind of hyped on LGD coming into the tournament a little bit because their mid-jungle synergy can be quite strong.
It does get me pretty hype going into tomorrow's best of fives, but I'm sure if you're on the opposite side of that, you got some things that you're going to be looking into. Mark, you had already touched on it a bit, being that we just witnessed the defeat of Mad Lions at the hands of TCL Supermassive. What does that mean overall in the context of play-ins and Worlds Beyond?
I mean, just in the context of playing, which kind of already hit, this is a historic moment, you know, losing a best of five and Supermassive being able to take that upset. Huge, huge, huge. I mean, it feels really bad because it's the first time we've had fourth seeds, and so it is a bit of an experiment, and I think we are learning a lot about regional depth and how strong teams are as you go down. I think that's super interesting to see that, you know, it's not like, oh, these teams are as good as our 8th best teams. It's like, no, they're right around our 4th, 3rd level, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah, I think it means more for TCL, the fact that you have a strong team in the wildcard regions, maybe in the Unicorns of Love as well, being able to top that would give us a better indication of where they're at, and less on the fact that EU lost. Yeah, LEC did send their 4th team, but from what the LEC casters were talking about, these guys have such a minute amount of stage games, considering that they started playing this year and then had to go online, and then now you are flying back to China to restart playing online. So I really do give them a bigger pass for that. So I think it's just the fact that Supermassive is strong and less that LEC as a region is weak.
And I know a lot of NA fans are going to wake up and just start memeing, you know, oh, haha, you suck, you know, whatever. But this is bad news for NA fans, too. You might not realize it, but because of how the 4th seed situation lined up heading into group stage, TL is no longer, you know, locked into A. They can end up in Group B in the group of death. We should have been cheering for Mad Lions if you're an NA fan. Like, I don't think the memeing was worth it if Team Liquid ends up in Group B.
They're good enough. They can do it.
I'm just cheering for good gameplay, Mark. That's all I can keep my energy focused on right now. What are you doing to me, man?
I'm just letting you know what's coming down the pipeline.
All right. Well, before we even get to that point, we do have to review some important aspects of today, because us being here on Worlds Cooldown does unfortunately mean that we do have to bid the official goodbyes to 2 more teams from their Worlds contention, but they still deserve some love shed on the highlight moments. They brought us a lot of enjoyment at that. So first on it, we have it. As the day has set on day 6, Rainbows are going to go with it, everybody. LLA Rainbow7 giving a tremendous performance, but we do bid them farewell.
Yeah. The other thing is LGD. Shockwave, the shockwave on Shie. The spear. Oh, here's the cannon minion instead, but the true shock burst comes in, and Shie is just knocked up and taken down. Send him back to the grave. And the dragon's actually almost already done. Langxing's going to go in. The Destiny use in the back of the pit, and they're going to Jose Diodo. The shockwave hits onto 2, but the dive is in, and Jose Diodo is Jose Dodo as he goes extinct. As Kramer's opening up with spray and pray, but Rainbow7 going to try and turn it around. Shadow flashing away. Laser still alive in the back of it. Peanut goes gold, and now Kramer is the target. It's a 3v2 in favor of Rainbow7, and Laser alone, and Arce are popping off. Double kill for the Ezreal.
Rainbow7 moving in, looking to stop him. Boss has no ulti, keep it in mind. Shadow's able to find the 3-man knockup. Rainbow7 going in, looking for the engage, looking for the kills, looking for the team fight. Able to find one on DeSantis. Anana Sig going in, Anana Sig going out. No way to close the distance on that one. The Unicorns are love, baby. Unicorns might be real, but they're an endangered species.
Well, the good news for Rainbow7 is that we heard from an interview from their jungler, Jose Diodo, that just the scrimming here at Worlds has given them such a better understanding of playing the game, has really elevated them. So if they can take that knowledge, bring it back to Latin America, then start getting other teams on the same wavelength and playing the game, you might actually end up elevating the region. And when you try again next year, you might actually be in Supermassive's shoes.
Yeah, it's a lot of really young guys, too. I mean, Rainbow7 is a well-known name for people who watch play-ins, but it's a totally new lineup for this organization. A lot of young guys, Jose Diodo himself, popping off huge. I mean, everyone was paying attention to him. Those Evelyn games, those Lee Sin games, I think people are going to be excited to see more of him. And who knows, maybe there's some offers knocking on the door, seeing if he wants to come play for one of the major regions. We'll have to see. But overall, very, very impressive performance out of him.
You know something we don't?
No, I do not. Speculating wildly, as I do best.
And Twitter was too. They were talking all about how maybe we'll be seeing him over on our side, which, hey, I wouldn't be opposed to after what we got to see from him. And I think it's a testament to the excitement we have here in play-ins, what it means to each region. We saw the smiles on their faces even after the defeat, and I'm sure we'll see more of them to come. And same with our second team that we have to say farewell to, because they did try to claw from the cliffs, but in the end, Mad Lions were defeated by TCL's Papara Supermassive. So we bid them adieu.
We have 2v2, the TP's behind them.
This is very low levels at the moment. Shinny forced to flash, goes golden for the time being. Here comes Orome. There's the Nimbus strike into the crushing blow. Gets enough damage down to get Mad Lions their first kill of the game. And looking to teleport up.
Ooh, that shockwave.
That shockwave was not really going to do enough. Humanoid's running for his life. Come on, Protect keeps him alive. That's the showstopper. Flash away from Humanoid. Shinny gets devoured up. Spat out Shadow takes him out. True Shot Barrage flies across the INTZ backline. And Mikau and Envy are trying to spit back. Redbird is under some trouble. The shockwave's not been pulled yet. Shinny and Tay waiting. That's the shockwave used just for Redbird. Mikau with the Dawning Shadows. Here comes Shinny. Redbird finally goes down, but Envy's in a fantastic spot. Spitting the poison from behind the chicken camp. All of a sudden, Orome with the Hextech Ultimatum needs to get away. That's the Flash QW that Humanoid was looking for.
LEC's number 4 seed, Mad Lions. Ta-ta for now, but what a series it was.
Yeah, it was super back and forth. They easily could have come out with it with just a little bit better of a game 5, but felt like they kind of got out-drafted as was going back and forth in the series with Blue Side. But I'm still excited to see more of these players because, like we were just talking about with a lot of the Rainbow7 people, you know, these are 4 rookies plus Humanoid, who's been to Worlds twice now in a row. So I'm really excited to see what the future holds for all of them. And like Crumbs was saying, you know, getting actual more stage games under their belt before playing it on the Worlds level.
Crumbs.
Humanoid, it was the guy for me. I mean, this guy in mid lane was doing so much work. Him and Carsey, really, it felt like it was a 2-man team a lot of the time, not just in the best of 5, but during the whole group stage. So really had a few players that were able to step up, and the rest, well, they're new. You can kind of expect this to happen. It's just such a different feeling considering the circumstances of this year. The quarantine, I think, was something that just threw such a curveball at a lot of players.
Well, let's take a look at one of those players then, because, hey, on League's biggest stage, a win or loss can come down to those split second plays, and we got to see that exemplified, those mechanics on Full Lock, and what we have in Every Second Counts, powered by Cisco. Kaiser really definitely brought the energy to kick things off in the series, Mark.
Yeah, they went back to one of the things that they were playing a little bit earlier on in the year with the fasting Senna, and Kaiser, as support, having that flexibility, they are able to kind of delay the situation out until you can show up on that Wukong carry, make a big play in the top lane, and they did not end up being able to win that game. But Kaiser, you know, like you heard Crumbs talking about with Humanoid and Carsey, was kind of the third wheel, I think, for this team. He had a lot of great plays over the course of this series, just not quite enough of them to take it.
Yeah, it was a car with 3 wheels indeed.
They needed one more wheel.
Just don't lean on that side, we'll get there.
I mean, they have claws. Wouldn't they pop the wheels? I guess there's something else to look into. But for now, we're going to go ahead and step away here. But in just a few, we have more Worlds Cooldown after this. Welcome back to the Worlds Cooldown presented by State Farm. With our first best of 5s completed, it is time for us to hit you with the recap, taking you through the top moments of today for any of you fans that may have missed out on the action. So, fellas, are you ready to dive into it? A little different style than we have on Cooldown in the past.
Let's do it.
All right, first best of 5 was a quicker one. We had Rainbow7 versus LGD Gaming.
That's right, and we start things off with a really cool Camille Galio combination that we're so used to, but it is into a comp that wants you to dive them. You have a Kindred on the lineup, so LGD was just able to make sure that their composition never got caught out beyond a few members. Cool little interaction there between Volibear and Camille. Normally you can get off or get away from quite a bit of crowd control. Not the Hextech Ultimatum, but he still ends up going down on the side as the rest of the team is ready to follow up on him. And Rainbow7, this was at least a better look for me for them, where they had something prepared. It was just that against LGD's very easy to disengage comp. It was so hard for them. And then the Rakan comes in, and LGD is just starting to realize that they don't actually need to do that much. Just draft well, play group together, and the fights and the errors that they had in most of the mid-game and group stages just vanished.
Yeah, game 2. Oh, sorry. I was going to help you out. I was going to say game 2 was a much different story where LGD just absolutely ran this game over. Peanut was huge on the Kindred, getting a huge early game advantage, and that was the Peanut that people were waiting for. You know, he was on some people's top 20 list and had really failed to perform during the round robin portion of play-ins, and finally started showing up in this series was massive, and GA as well, comboing together with the Orianna. He had some huge shockwaves.
And you don't want to pick Aatrox into these compositions.
No.
This was probably one of the worst Aatrox picks of all time there. Made it really hard for R7 to actually have a composition that could do anything against the kiting tools of LGD.
Yeah, Wangji also bringing out his famous Gnar. It's not super in the meta right now, but it's nice to see them having their kind of pocket picks that they can bust out at any given moment. And then, I mean, this was a shellacking as the fights just kept going on. 29 minutes, Baron's already down, getting the Inferno Soul, or excuse me, Elder Dragon, and just running this game over.
When the Graves dashes over like that, you know something has gone terribly wrong in the game.
I mean, when we go into game number 3, though, it does feel like Rainbow7 were trying to bring things back a bit. Specifically, we mentioned some of that play from Jose Deodo. This is the final moment of game number 2. But Crumbs, do you think that as far as the way that they're able to approach the beginning of the game, was Rainbow7 having any hope in them being able to try and counter the Kindred on the opposite side?
I mean, I think that their approach towards Kindred is incorrect in that you should just go as long range as possible. You just poke her out, never get in her effective range because she doesn't have any sustain. She's very squishy. At the very least, Jose Deodo had a really good performance on LinkedIn, despite the pick not being cool. The good thing for me that I can take away from R7 here is that when their backs were against the wall in group stages, they were able to completely body Unicorns of Love. Here against LGD, backs against the wall, they had their best game of the best of 5. So I think that this is a team that clearly has the skill. They just need to get in the right mindset that they have to be playing their best from the very beginning of the series.
Yeah, and you saw that Lee Sin Kindred interaction, which is why some people do like Lee Sin into Kindred. On the pro stage, though, it does feel tough because you eventually start becoming useless as the game goes on because you do have that nice Kindred interaction. But now there's an Orin in front of your face, there's a Leona in front of your face, and it becomes a lot harder to make those plays. I also got to say the Camille counterpick into Orin is a tough one. Doesn't always work out, but this was especially problematic because the Kayle kept ulting Set early on in the fights when Set still had his Haymaker shield still to go. And so there was a bit of a lack of synergy in how they ended up playing these fights out. I wouldn't blame Jose Deodo at all. He was probably the shining member on the team in this game, but they just came up a little short as the team fights went on. And LGD was struggling in team situations in group stage. That has turned around here in plans. They've actually been a lot better around objectives.
I think if you're going to see Kayle again, you might see her paired with the Kai'Sa again in the bottom lane. We've got the lethality Kai'Sa build, and if you actually have her go into the backline with the Kayle, you actually have a really impressive combo with the Kayle ultimate here to protect your tank supporter, at least you're not getting a lot of value. So again, I think R7 could have done a little bit more in the draft to take advantage of what their champions bring to the table.
It's interesting to hear about how LGD was struggling a bit earlier on in play-ins with the team fighting, considering that's some of the stuff that they were commended for during the regular season. But now, Mark, do you feel that they've been ramping up from game to game in a way where people should be increasingly scared of them going into the next best of 5? Or is it still a little shaky in your opinion?
I'm not 100% sold quite on the level that I think I was coming into the event. The best of 1s were very painful, and while they looked better in the best of 5s here, Rainbow7 is not the stiffest of competition. They had a great run in play-ins, but as you start watching them, most likely slotting into Group C if they can even beat Legacy, which is still up in the air. Legacy was able to beat a lot of good teams in Group A. So, I mean, it's a tough road for them, and it's only going to get harder from here.
I'm not buying into the LGD hype just yet. If they decisively beat Legacy, then we might be thinking it's time to reconsider where we thought LGD was at.
I mean, but if anyone's looking to have some confidence in the team, a 3-0 is one way to start instilling it, especially when comparing to our next match, which did go the distance. We have 5 games in total, but we're going to go ahead and start in our recap at game 3 because there is so much for us to break down with Mad Lions facing off against Supermassive.
Yeah, and this was a very back and forth series. Like you said, a lot of the times it did feel like the red side team was struggling in draft a little bit more. And this was another case of that. Supermassive Kakao on the Lilia, something that's been criticized heavily a little bit in the round robin stage. He was able to pick up a lot of wins. There's a nice interaction with the MF ult where you can kind of layer the sleep with the ultimate. They didn't actually get that specific combo off that many times. They just had a straight good front-to-back team fighting team comp. And it was cool to see some of these pocket picks coming out for them over the course of the series. This game had the MF, and it always felt like there was something up their sleeve. not always going to work out in their favor, but I did like the options for Supermassive. The only problem was I didn't love Armut playing all these tanks all the time. I thought he was a really good player on the Wukong and stuff in the group stage, so I was a little sad to see him given tank duty this series, but his last game did make up for it a little bit.
Yeah, I love seeing Armut on tank duty. I'm excited to know that he can actually pop off on the carries in other best of series though, because I know that Supermassive will give him the agency if it comes to it, and he has quietly been one of the best, if not the best player in play-ins thus far. It tends to happen at Worlds where you have one top laner that just randomly surprises everybody because it's so hard to know exactly where top laners are at. The role that not only do we least observe by the nature of the game, but the one that is also the most isolated.
Yeah, and when looking upon it too, I think the bot lane for Supermassive has been such a key strength, so perhaps Armut is key to also being able to unleash that when it comes to these compositions.
Yeah, I think they can play a lot of different styles. So like Crumbs is saying, they have this carry top matchup that they can play potentially with Armut, but that's depending on also where Kakao's going to want to go, what they think their best chances are to win the game, because you also have these Leona plays that you want to go down bot lane and dive turrets with a MF ult layered on top, which is a lot more of their focus this time around, and they were able to execute that super well.
Feels like a lot of the priority on their draft just depends on, are they going to get Lily or Nidalee? Is anybody going to actually open up the first 2 rotations of bans with those 2 picks, knowing that Kakao is still going to be relevant, right? He's still going to have Graves, he's still going to have Kindred, other picks of the like. And then we're going back to game 4, which was the one where was a lot more exciting, confusing. There was a Vayne in this game. Why that happened, I don't know. It looked cool because you had a 6 skin, but the team fighting was another thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a known Vayne hater. You can mark me down for that. And this is another one of those times where I'm like, cool, you guys have all these nifty picks up your sleeve. I hate it. Don't show me the Vayne. And it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's an okay laning phase into Ezreal Alistar, but then you have such a hard time getting involved in not getting hit by just like collateral AoE that's not even like targeted at you. You're super squishy. You're gonna get poked out as well in a lot of situations. You have a hard time running into an Ornn, into a Cassio, into a Graves, and even though they actually played it pretty well, I'll give Supermassive credit that they didn't lose this game as hard as I thought they were going to, and it took a couple team fights to get to the one where you see the Vayne kind of getting picked on a little bit here. This is an example where the Vayne could have died even earlier if the Graves ult was a little bit more on target after he gets chunked out by Carzzy a little bit. And Carzzy had a pretty good job in this series chasing down Zeitnot. This was one where he went maybe a little bit too deep, but you could argue it also stopped the Baron from going down.
Yeah, I think he had to go for that, but there's actually one play that I want to highlight here. Watch, oh, we didn't get to see it, but you just get to see how Vayne plays out. Like, watch what Vayne does, right? Like, they're walking through my ass, and he's like, what do I do here? Am I just standing still and auto-attacking an Ornn? It's like, okay, yeah, you do get to do damage to the Ornn, but your team is still dying in the front line. So Vayne's short range ends up being her shortcoming.
Yeah, I mean, you also are so single target DPS focused compared to a lot of things in the meta right now, compared to an MF laying down this fat ult, dropping damage instantly at the fight. This Vayne's just doink, 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 and if they get out of range, you can't really follow up. We talk about Supermassive losing drafts. This is one where they hard win it with that Malphite counter pick top.
Almost a double kill.
The 2v1, absorbing the gank, still getting the kill. That is a brutal start to the series. I think Mad did try and come back in it, but that was not the foot you want to start game 5 on.
Yeah, you just know that the Malphite, especially against the Corki, was just going to be such a winning pick. I think that Corki should have been changed entirely. You just could not afford to have another auto attacker going into a Malphite, but they target bans humanoids so much. I think it was 6 mid lane bans, and then you get to see what the Malphite gets to do against this pick. And even though he doesn't get to one-shot him, and the fight looks like Mad Lions could still have some hope in it, don't be fooled. Supermassive still had the compositional advantage by a mile and were able to easily turn things around.
Yeah, and this is a huge fight by Bolulu, being able to get that showstopper into the backline and the Haymaker to actually finish off the Corki. I mean, that was a situation where if Humanoid was able to go untouched, maybe he could have carried that fight, but that was a huge fight by Bolulu there. And then Supermassive wasn't out of it. Anytime the engages weren't super clean, you basically have 3 auto attackers, like you said. That does have a bit of a problem with like Ninja Tabby efficiency. But hey, if they flub their engage, you can just keep auto attacking people. And this is a post 20-minute fight that was able to go in their favor a little bit.
Watch the Caitlyn here. So Zeitnot has been quietly a pretty good AD, somebody to watch in the group stage just to see exactly where he stands compared to the rest of the competition. But it's already a really fed Caitlyn, laying down traps, preventing Matt from regrouping despite having the numbers advantage. And then Caitlyn actually lands a trap onto the Senna and the Renekton, making it so easy to finish them off.
Why were they so split? Just go to the dragon. They were so split. I mean, huge credit to Kakao as well, securing that dragon in a stressful situation. Zeitnot as well, winning that kind of like 2v1 up on the top side there. And then after that point, it was pretty much all over. The front line was too strong. The Caitlyn had too much protection, and you know, Supermassive was playing super well. Snowflower over the course of the series, we haven't had a chance to talk about him, but he had some great games. Alistar, Morgana showing a breadth of champions that he can bust out, and there's so many people on Supermassive who can step up in any individual game.
I really also like that Armut has been using emotes as well. The emote game hasn't been that impressive at Worlds thus far. We're used to some really crazy ones from the regional leagues, but Armut with the Malphite, the classic thumbs up after getting hit by a Renekton and Graves in 1v2ing, so good stuff out of him.
That's true. I've been missing the emote game so far here in play-ins, but Supermassive still proving themselves in this series. But looking at it in total, Crumbs, we've mentioned the fact that they had some cases of using comfort picks, or in this last one, really hard-winning draft. What hope does it instill in you when looking at them moving forward?
I think the hope is that you have a jungler that is actually incredibly proficient on the most important AP junglers right now, and the rest of the team do play tanks, hard engaged to round them out. So they actually have the better look out of all the teams we've seen at play-ins in making sure that the junglers' picks are synergizing with the rest of the team instead of just picking it because they're a power pick. So this is something that can go a really long way, since it's quite clear that they're very happy with playing these tanks mid or top.
Junglers have been so key in a lot of the matches, not just today, but throughout play-ins. There are some other players, though, that are worth noting from their performances today. So let's go ahead and isolate one from each series that we witnessed. First one, of course, we already talked about. We had LGD versus Rainbow7. Mark, who would you say was the most standout player, in your opinion?
I would go with GA. It was close between him and Peanut over the course of this series, but I think Peanut kind of getting bullied a little bit by Jose Diodo in the last game made me lean towards GA. The TF counter pick was really big in terms of being able to shut down the carry Camille, make side lane plays, and just be active on the map. He had a great Orianna in game 2, comboing with Peanut. And then game 3, the Syndra came out, and he was making a lot of big plays, able to find kills in the mid game. He did die a couple times in the early game to some of those proactive ganks because Rainbow7 was playing really well in that portion of the game. But from then on, he was making assassinations all over the map.
This is a player that's been around for a really long time as well. So seeing him with Peanut is such an odd combination to actually be in this stage of, oh, you're not really sure how good they are because they've been struggling and now they're getting it together. So I think that this is a team that can have the confidence, if it actually starts to build up as they progress through the tournament, to go really far. They are the LPL's 4th seed for a reason. It's just that every single time they get hyped, you're always so cautious, since we've seen them fall from that high point too often.
One of those Syndra plays, I think he was shopping immediately before, or attempting to do so, and then still made it look effortless in the way he was able to execute. And many have commended the veteranship on the side of LGD as being able to push them through, even when they've had some moments of faltering. If we're looking over on the other side at one of our play-in regions, TCL Supermassive, we gotta look at one person individually. Crumbs, let me know who it is.
It's the chocolate boy, it's Kakao. The fact that he's actually able to do really well on these jungle picks is really impressive. Yeah, the Hecarim level game 1 was cool, but we already had seen that in the group stage. And the reason why I highlight Kakao is that I do feel like before this best of 5, if the teams were not able to pick up wins on Lilia, we might have actually started to see a drop in her priority because the record was just so abysmal. But the fact that he still shows up and proves how valuable she can be in these engages, and in the way that Supermassive was using the Leona as well to combo both ultimates together, proves that this pick is actually a very top tier. She's just really hard, and your team needs to know what you're doing with her.
Yeah, I think that's... Go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say, that's just the one situation I think people struggle with a lot is the squishiness of it. We've seen people get picked off all over the map in the mid game, going for these kinds of invade situations that they sometimes can get away with on either more aggressive junglers who are able to build a little tankier, or champions that have more mobility. She is very fast, but she needs to stack that Q up to actually get out of there, and so she doesn't quite have that instant reactivity that some other junglers have, like Elisa and W.
It's that speed that's the problem, though, because when you're the jungler, you're like, okay, you actually have to keep yourself so close between I am dead right now and I am just in range of swinging my branch on top of you. So you step up a little bit too much because you're so quick and you've got the phase rush. You feel like you're on top of the world. Suddenly, Leona just one-taps you, knock, knock, and then you're dead.
I was just about to ask you both kind of what was the difference maker, but there is a kind of a fine line in trying to execute with Lilia in the best way possible. Today on Cooldown, as always, we are recognizing some of those great executions from all walks of the Rift, which includes assists in our Assist of the Day presented by State Farm. What do you know? Another Alistar play really showing out here in play-ins.
Yeah, this was a monstrous play by Snowflower. I mean, this was a game that was pretty neck and neck, and he had a flash headbutt pulve over the wall into 3 men to set up the Galio ult on top. He also had the Hecarim running in with Cacao, and this was a game that set the pace for them in what would be a very, very long, difficult series. And Snowflower made a huge play for the team there, helping get the Baron.
This is the pick that got some buffs such a while ago, and some teams are dabbling with it, but now we're starting to see that if the teams are going to be revolving around front-to-back team fighting, around heavy engaged supports in the bottom lane, well, the Alistar fits that criteria very well, not only as your best engaged support for multi-pulls and peel, but also you don't die. You don't int when you go in, which is such a good thing to have compared to how many times we've seen picks like Nautilus go 0-8.
Yep. Very imperative in a series where so much of it came down to that team fighting, being able to rely on your support to get that very effective engage. And I'm sure we're going to see many more of those moments to come. We're wrapping things up here on our Worlds Cooldown for today, but let's take a look at what we have in store going on tomorrow, because we're still going strong with our best of 5 matches this time. Today's 2 winners will be facing off against the opposing group. That means that Papara Supermassive will go against OPL's Legacy Esports, and LGD Gaming will face LCL's Unicorns of Love. Oh, I'm so excited for these coming up, being that it's the first time that we have the team switching over. Also worth noting that LGD and Unicorns of Love both have side selection for game 1, and the loser of the previous game will have the next side selection. Just raw temperature check right now, Mark, of these 2 series, which one are you looking forward to most?
Oh.
I think it's got to be Unicorns of Love versus Power Supermassive. I think, these are people who are close enough together they can actually play over the course of the year, probably scrims a number of times. And I think it's going to be the closer of the 2 series. I know Spawn and the OPL guys might get mad at me at this, but with how, LGD looked, I definitely think it's going to be tough for Legacy.
I'm mad at you. I'm casting that game. I think it's going to be much closer than that.
Really?
Legacy. Yeah, why wouldn't they? LGD beat up a Rainbow7 that had wonky drafts every single time. I think that Legacy can actually have already seen what LGD's plan to recover from the terrible group stage that they had, and so they can just attack the draft a little bit better that way. They should actually pop off as long as mid does not die. If mid is not able to hold his own against Gia, yeah, I think it's not going to be close. But if Tally can just hold his own, his flanks have been so important for winning team fights for Legacy that taking apart one of LGD's weaknesses thus far, which has been grouping up and getting those fights around these objectives, could prove to be the difference maker for Legacy to have their number 1 seed beat LPL's 4th. It's a really high match if they actually win it.
Yeah.
But Crumbs, being that we're switching over and starting to cross the 2 groups here in play-ins, how do you think that's going to contribute to whether it's just the fan experience or looking at that prep process and kind of crossing into that other territory?
Oh, it's really tough for somebody to have watched all the games and be like, okay, how's it going to play out in the cross play? Because what likely happened is that before this, some of these teams were actually scrimming against each other, so they might have had some indication of where they were at during the practice, so that could play into it. But from the fans' perspective, you just see that they have 2 different styles, and you just speculate on how they're going to clash. It's a little bit more of what we saw at the beginning of groups and of play-ins, which is a bit of a free-for-all there and a big draft difference often.
Free-for-all territory. We're somehow getting back to that despite being, what, 6 days deep into play-ins now? I'm excited for it. I know all of you watching are as well. When it comes down to Worlds Cooldown here, we're going to wrap things up. So on behalf of myself, the casters, and all of the remote broadcast crews all around the world, thank you so much for tuning in. Tomorrow, we have more Worlds 2020 action for you that you don't want to miss. Until then, good morning, afternoon, evening, and good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good morning.